Howdy, this is a demo of my new Exporter41 scenario. Exporter being the code name for the Allied invasion of the Vichy French Levant in 1941. It's a small scenario, plays pretty quick, especially I think in this case because we're starting with more or less the historical setup, which isn't necessary because there are free deployment options available for both sides, but starting with the historical setup, not the greatest in the world for the Vichy player, the Axis player. But I think it's worthwhile demonstrating how this works, so we'll get to it pretty quick here. We will skip over the free deployment and we'll go straight into beginning the Allied player turn for June 1, 1941. Note that normally there would be an Axis player turn for June 1, 1941 preceding the Allied player turn, but in this scenario, there is no Axis player turn in June 1, 41. We go straight to the Allies so they can begin their invasion. On the other hand, there is no special surprise invasion turn, so the Allies don't get the double hit at the beginning of the game. Anyway, here we go. Don't expect the most brilliant generalship here. This is just to demonstrate how things work. So we can see the situation. June 141, Allies, initial weather is clear. Allies have 3 air factors. The range is 20 for bombing, 6 for intercepting, and they have a very small rail cap of 1 point. Initial phase, reinforcements, nothing coming in for the Allies this turn, so we'll just continue. Special replacements, I'm using the same homemade rule that I invented for my Blitz 41 scenario. But in any event, there are no special replacements available here. Not at this time. And we see the supply situation. Everything is under control. At the beginning, in terms of logistics for the game, we're going to find that the Allies should have more or less ample supplies here, but not really enough to waste them. And importantly, they will need to pay attention to when new supplies become available, where do they need to be distributed? Because the Allied player will have to decide if he puts the supplies in the wrong place, won't do much good, and then he will be out of luck. As for the Axis player, the Vichy player, they have just barely enough supplies, and those are going to dwindle, and they have slight chance, depending on die rolls, of getting more supplies coming in during the campaign, but that's not likely. They shouldn't count on it, so they need to pay attention to their supplies in particular. So we'll go ahead and confirm and complete the supply phase. There's really nothing going on here. We'll see the complete picture. Let me pull this down so it's more visible. The supply status report, and we can look at everything that's going on here. There are a couple of things marked in red, but no big deal, nothing to worry about right now. We'll close that. Here we go. It's now the movement phase for the Allied June 141 turn. And we'll just start clicking around here a little bit. I think, if we look over here at Beirut, for example, if we wanted to, we could conduct air missions. There's plenty of stuff going on here. We have airfield, so we could potentially catch some Vichy aircraft on the ground. There's some intrinsic AA. There's a supply depot. We could bomb supplies if we wanted to. There's a port. We could bomb port capacity, although that's probably not necessary. There's also a minor naval base here in Beirut, and the Vichy player does have, I think, maybe 1 naval point, not a whole lot. So we could bomb that base in the hope of catching the Vichy naval point there. And there's also coast defense battery in there. And here are some of the possibilities. But we're not going to do that. We're just going to exit out of there because the Allies don't really have a lot of air power at all, and they're probably going to need it all for ground support. The air marshals might tell you that it's better to be thinking strategically and bombing enemy aircraft on airfields and knocking out airfields and doing that sort of thing, but I think we need it for ground support, so that's all we're going to do. Now, the Allies have roughly half their forces on the map and ready to go right now, and roughly the other half will be arriving over the next 2 game turns. So we'll have to deal with a relatively small force going against Vichy, and that's what happened historically. I think the Allies sort of underestimated the resistance they were going to face. So we'll do the best we can. We'll start down here. These are Free French forces, and we'll jump in here and surround that guy. We'll go here. If we try to move him, we'll find that he's not available yet. If we tried to move him, we'd find that he's not available yet either. They're sitting on the map, but they have 0 MPs at this point. If we look up here, and this will allow us to jump here pretty quickly, we've got Hab Force sitting in here at Rutbah, and we've also got elements of the Indian 10th Infantry Division supported by some trucks sitting around up here, but none of these guys are ready to go yet. It's a good thing because Vichy does not really have enough forces to put up a serious defense here in what we could call the southern front, and also fend off these troops coming in from Iraq. So it's a good thing that the Allies don't have them coming in right now, or it would be all over really fast for Vichy. And it might be all over really fast anyway. We'll have to see how this goes. All right, so I think that's really probably enough moving here. Remember that if we wanted to do it, we could go in here and say that we want to plan an attack, and we could initiate this planning and say, oh yeah, we want to save that so we can remember that we intended to attack there in the combat phase. And frankly, I think the scenario is too small. We don't really need to do that. I think I can remember a couple of attacks that I'm going to make. On the other hand, that's a very beneficial feature in Blitz 41, where there will be dozens of attacks, and by the time the combat phase comes around, you might have forgotten what you wanted to do during the movement phase. Anyway, let's go ahead and move on. We'll say that's all the movement we're going to do. We'd love to be able to move 10th Indian Division, but they're not released yet. They can't do anything. So we'll end the phase. Do we really want to end it? We could say, no, I forgot to do something. I want to go back. But we'll say, okay, we do want to end it. So let's make some attacks here. And let's see. Let's start here. Let's try this out. But again, this is not going to be the most brilliant generalship that you've ever seen. We'll just move along, see what we can accomplish. So we've got 4-1 with a -1. Everybody in supply here. We'll go ahead and try that. So I think the Vichy guy is probably surrounded there anyway. So here we go. Oh, we roll a 1 for no effect. So we'll go on to the next one, which will be here. We'll initiate this attack. We got 4-1 with no die mods. We could be throwing in defensive air support, offensive air support. We do have this commando unit that we get to use once on this turn, but we'll save him, and we'll resolve this combat. And we roll a 4 for a DR, and picking to retreat. There is no place for him to go, so we have a couple choices. We could either say, look, we know it has no place to go, so we'll just delete it, or we could say, we're not really sure what's going on. Let's try to retreat, and it's going to say, no, you can't do that. And he's deleted, so we actually knocked out those 2 cavalry regiments there. So that's a good thing. Kind of opens the road to Damascus for the Free French. And then who's going to advance? Well, let's say not them. But let's go down here and say we do want them to advance. So they move into there. And let's now go over and do our final attack over here. So we'll initiate this. And they have some defensive air. So this Vichy is going to throw in 1. And they also have some naval gunfire support. And the Allies have a little more of each. We'll try that. So we have a 2.9 to 1. In my system, beneath the hood, the code is going to check and see if we can get that up to a 3 to 1, or if it will do the normal rounding down to a 2 to 1. So there'll be a 9/10 chance that this will actually end up as a 3 to 1. Also, I almost forgot. Let's throw in those commandos. The commandos They might help, they might do nothing, they might get eliminated, but we'll throw them in and see what happens. And I think this is where they were used historically along here, I believe. Anyway, we'll go ahead and resolve this combat. Oh, we rolled a 1. So we only got a 2-to-1 out of it. And we got an AR, attacker retreat. And this is another thing I've changed a little bit. I don't believe those guys really should have to retreat. So in my system, they don't have to retreat, and they just stay there. But they do take a very minor loss. They lose 1 point out of that. And of course, one point is probably not that small in Exporter. Small in most scenarios, I think. We'll click for the next combat. If we look over here, by the way, we can see that, yeah, so he went down to a 1-1-8, so he lost a factor there. So the Allied player did quite poorly with the attacks. Sometimes those opening attacks, more or less like that, will just totally destroy the Vichy defense. But here, this looked more like historical stuff that the Allies took rather a bloody nose there. Didn't make much progress at all, except on the road to Damascus. Anyway, we will end the combat phase. Well, there's a little diagnostic, but we won't worry about that right now. And then, are you ready to end the combat phase? Yes, we are. So, exploitation phase, until Half Force shows up, and they're not released and available yet. Until Half Force shows up, the Allies have no combat motorized units, so there's nothing they can do in exploitation. So we will end the player turn, and it's bringing me that diagnostic again, and that's nothing important. It was just something I was checking the other day, and I forgot to turn off the diagnostic. So before ending the turn, maybe we want to do all these things, check supplies at friendly depots, blah, 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 make sure everything is under control, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. So we'll go to June 241. So we move from June 1 to June 2. Now game turn 2, it's the Axis player turn, initial phase, weather remains clear. Vichy, they have 1 air factor with a bomber range of 10, interceptor range of 5, and they have 1 point of rail capacity, which I think we're going to use here in a minute. So we will close that, and we'll check for reinforcements, supplies, Air Force. So they did get a point for the Air Force. Vichy got another air point came in, so they now have 2 points. They didn't get more Navy, they didn't get supplies, they didn't get any ground units. We'll continue. Special replacements, none were accrued. Now, normally some would have accrued, but those 2 cavalry regiments that were eliminated were surrounded when it happened, so they didn't get special replacements for them. So we'll end that phase. Oh, this diagnostic is going to keep coming up, and we'll just ignore it. And that's my fault because I forgot to disable that diagnostic before I started doing this. So just pretend you never saw this. All right, so here we go to the supply phase. And it's pointing out that there's some Allied units down here. They're out of supply. Nothing to worry about because those are units that haven't actually arrived on the map yet, and they'll be fine when the time comes. So we'll go ahead and complete this. Those diagnostics are going to keep happening. Here we go with the overall supply situation, and it is reminding us now that Damascus does not have enough supply points available to sustain all of the units that are assigned to it. So that's one of the things that we'll take care of right away. Let's look up here, I think, at Aleppo, and let's see what's happening with supplies here. So they have 10 supply points, but they don't have any units assigned to them, and they do happen to have this 1 point of rail cap. So let's move from this depot to another depot, and it shows where the road is available, where the railroad is available, and where the depots are. And we want to move them down here to Damascus. How many we're going to move? We're going to move 12 of them, which is all that's there, and that's also exactly right for 1 point of rail cap. So we'll move those down there. And moving supplies to Damascus from here. What did I do wrong? Is that right? There we go. All right, so we got those moved down there. And that should take care of the supply situation for the Vichy forces. And now we can exit out of here. And what are we going to do to defend this position? So these guys are coming here. So I think one of the things that we need to do is probably get this cavalry unit out of here. Try to block the road there. We'll bring these guys over. And we'll continue to hold this. Let's see if we can bring up some reinforcements. So if we go here, we've got that regiment available to us. We've got some tanks here. I think this is probably a good opportunity to leave the construction regiment behind, roll these guys up here, we'll merge all of them into one headquarters. And let's see. Unfortunately, he only has 6 MPs. But we'll go ahead and bring him up, and we'll use admin movement to get him as far as we can. So I think that'll do it there. And then we've got somebody over here, and let's roll them up into here. And I think that's about it. Now the border with Iraq is wide open, and there are going to be some guys coming in against Vichy there pretty quick. But I think at the moment we'll see if we can't whack the Free French and then worry about that open border in the east. You know, we'll burn that bridge when we come to it. So let's in this phase, diagnostic. We are ready to do that. And now let's see what happens if we can get a decent attack going here. So if we do that, and we throw in our 3 air, and they throw in their 2 air, well, 1.6 to 1 with the +2, that's not a very good attack. But given the situation here in the Levant, and Vichy is never going to get any really good attacks. So it's probably about the best they can hope for. If they can pull this off, it'll go a long way to extending the campaign. They'll be able to defend the Levant longer than usual. Whereas if they don't pull off this attack, then they'll just be in the usual sinking boat anyway. So let's go ahead and give it a try. We'll see what happens here. We rolled an exchange. All right, so we lost that Free French unit, and the system automatically made some deductions from the Vichy French units. And who do we want to advance? I don't think we want to advance anybody. Oh, we lost these guys. Okay, so let's just leave it there. We'll say there's no advance. I don't think we want to stick our nose down there. And there's probably no place else we can attack. Maybe over here. So we've got 5. We could do this. We'll give it a try and see what happens here. So it's a 5 to 1. But they have 3 available. Vichy has 1 available. 1.5 to 1 with no die mods. I think I'm going to cancel that combat. I think we'll just hold that position there. We will, in the combat phase, I don't think there's anything else we can do. Get rid of that diagnostic again. Oh, now I have a bunch of them. And those are all reflecting units that have been eliminated that the system is checking to see what their situation is. Are we ready to end the combat phase? Yes, we are ready to end the combat phase. Now, let's check something here. Let's look at the dead pile. See what the situation is. Yeah, so the Allies lost that Free French infantry brigade, but they've lost, the Axis has lost 2 cavalry regiments and both of their light armored battalions. And that was really their ace in the hole, those armored battalions, because the Allies don't have any tanks. They also don't have any anti-tank forces. So that was a shame. Both of those got lost in the exchange. Note, by the way, that this is my own homemade change to the normal rule. Usually the player losing the forces, losing some of his forces in an exchange gets to pick which ones. I decided that I wanted to have the system do it. So the player doesn't get control over that. The system randomly picks which units get eliminated in an exchange or a defender halved or that sort of thing. Anyway, so there we go. With those 2 tank units destroyed, Vichy has no one to move in exploitation. So we'll end the exploitation phase. We will look at these lovely diagnostics again. Remind me to turn those off. Before ending the turn, it might be useful to check the following things. I think we're okay. So we'll do that, and we now go to the Allied player turn here. And we'll close this. And we see now that the Allies have started to get some reinforcements. So that includes a couple of British infantry brigades over in Palestine. And then there are the Indian brigades that are showing up in Iraq and the trucks that are coming in to support them. So they've also got a bunch of supplies that we'll have to deal with. 3 new air points and 3 new naval points. So you can see that historically the Allies realized that they didn't have enough forces here, and they had to bring in as much as they could to deal with Vichy resisting quite a bit stronger than anticipated. Anyway, so we will continue, remembering that we're getting all these new guys available. We can see special replacements. So we're not quite in a position to actually generate any new units from those special replacements, or else it would tell us all about it. But we can see that we've saved up now a half a point of Australians and a half a point of Free French. So we'll end that phase for now. We will look at our diagnostics again. Isn't that fun? And then we're in the supply phase, and I think everything is pretty much under control. We'll go ahead and confirm it. Run through the diagnostics again. And we can see over here that Vichy is now starting to run out of supply points because they made that attack, and that attack used up extra supply points that would not normally have been used. Maybe they'll get some. Maybe they will be able to run the Allied blockade and get some supply points in when their turn comes around. All right, so here we are for movement. And the first thing that I really want to do here is check my depot here. And I want to create a new depot. And I want to create it here. And then I want to move some supply points by rail from this depot up to Haifa. So we're going to go to Haifa. We've got 1 point of rail cap. I don't know what the heck I was doing last time. It should be able to move those in there. Insufficient supply points. How many are there? Oh, there are only 8 there. So we will go ahead and move those. So now they're in Haifa. And also, I want to distribute the newly arrived supply points. So we got 36 new supply points. And I think they need to go to Haifa because that's where most of the fighting is going to be, up in that area. So we're going to say put all 36 of these new supply points in Haifa. That should be plenty to do with supplies. We don't really have to mess with much anything else here. Now, let's run up here to this side of the map. These guys are now available, and we can take this guy with 8. Notice that this little $sign and a 2 indicates that he is carrying 2 supply points. And that's as far as he can go. So as you can see, this is a wide open here. There are no defenses, but it's a long way to go. He's not combat motorized. So it's not really doing all that much good at this point, but maybe it's scaring. It's scaring General Dent's and the Vichy French forces. So let's run these guys in. 8 there. They're also carrying supplies with them. And better yet, we have this truck loaded with supplies. And it will also come up to here. We'll merge those. So again, while the trucks are motorized, 10th Indian is not motorized. So that's, it looks like a big threat there, but they're not moving very fast. We'll run here into the middle of the map, and we have Hab Force, and they're still not available yet. They won't come in until next turn. So we'll get rid of them, and we'll come back down here to the main front and see what we can do here. Let's try piling on here. We'll merge these together. And I think this guy should be available now. So he'll go here. We'll merge them together. So we now have all 3 Australian brigades in one hex, which means we can assemble them into the division. So if we look over here, we now have a 558 Australian Infantry Division there. And let's take him and him. We'll merge those 2 together, and we'll swing these, the Indian Brigade over here. We'll merge that. Just for the heck of it, we'll go back and change this over so that it looks like a British brigade. And oh yeah, we'll assemble it as well. Gives us an extra point, of course, when we do that. So return to movement here, and we will put the Free French Brigade here in kind of a blocking position. And these guys are just construction unit, but whoops, too far. Better a construction unit than no unit at all. And so that looks like about all we can do for this turn. So we will click here to end the phase. There's that stupid diagnostic again. And yes, we are ready to end that. So here we are in the combat phase. Let's see if we can make some progress on the road to Beirut. We'll initiate this attack. 1.2 to 1, so not very good. Well, Vichy will certainly bring in all of their air power and their naval power. And the Allies will do the same. Oh, and they still have this commando kicking around. So we'll see if we can get any use from the commando unit here. So we have a 2.6 to 1 with no die mods. 6 out of 10 chance that that will go up to a 3 to 1. So let's resolve the combat and see what happens. We roll a 3, so we get a defender retreat, so not really all that exciting. We'll move them to here, and we will move the Brits into there. That's all the combat. We'll end the combat phase. We'll look at this goofy diagnostic again. And I think that's it. So as you can see, this scenario is pretty small, pretty fast. Vichy did quite well here. I think better than any of my solo playtesting. They got some good Vichy die rolls on the first turn, and so they are holding up better than usual. But on the other hand, we have 10th Indian Division coming in from Iraq, and there are no Vichy forces in place to stop them. Hab force will be coming in the next turn. They have 12 movement points, and they're combat motorized, so they pretty much have the run of the map, unless you can get some guys in front of them to slow them down. So that's just an example of how my computerized Europa game system works, and how the Exporter41 scenario works. And I hope you enjoyed that, and hang around, and I'll have some more stuff come up pretty soon. Thanks. Take care.